Hello and welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Senior Editor David Patton, and we're delighted to have with us today Representative Michele Bachmann, the three-term Republican member of the House of Representatives from Minnesota, the founder of the Tea Party caucus, and also prominently mentioned now as a possible 2012 GOP presidential candidate. Well, Representative Michele Bachmann, thank you so much for joining us on Newsmax TV.
Thank you. It's an honor to be with Newsmax. I love the magazine. I thank you.
Let's turn right to current events. We understand that today a decision was made that next week there will be a vote that will be a straight, clean vote, an up and down vote on whether or not to raise the debt ceiling. Now, since we know that no one will go along with this on the Republican side of the aisle unless there are also corresponding cuts, is this really anything more than cheap politics?
Well, remember the reason why we're doing this. It was President Obama who said he wanted a clean up or down vote on whether we should increase the debt ceiling by somewhere around $2 trillion. That's a big question. And I think what we want to do is demonstrate to the American people the level of support that President Obama has for his proposition, which is let's continue the borrowing authority, because I think it's important people know what raising the debt ceiling is. It's the Congress gives permission to the federal government to borrow more money that we don't have. And we borrow it for the purpose of spending it. And so we need to know what this is about. President Obama wants the Congress to go to other countries and borrow $2 trillion that we don't have, that our children will have to pay back someday, and to use that to spend right now. And that isn't over many years. That's in a very short period of time, probably within a year. And so I think that's a very big question. So Republicans are giving to the president what he's asking, and I highly doubt that the president will get the answer that he wants, which is increased borrowing authority.
To listen to Obama administration folks talk about it, you'd think that it'll be Armageddon or something if that debt.
That was according to Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner, and look what happened. We're still standing.
And here we are. So is this being sort of exaggerated and exploited, really, for just pure political reasons? What's the motive behind this?
Well, of course it is. Of course it is. The Treasury Secretary, unfortunately, resorted to not only scare tactics, in my opinion, it was outright blatant lies, when he said that we would see the collapse of various things if we didn't allow the government to continue to borrow money and spend money that we don't have. What the Treasury Secretary has failed to tell the American people is that we have it within our discretion to pay our debts first. There's absolutely no reason why we should go into default. The figures that I have seen is that about 6% of what we take in approximately $2.2 trillion every year in revenue, and approximately 6% of that is required to pay off our debts. Just like if you have debts in your own family, you have to pay those first. We pay that off first. We have 94% of our revenue left. All we have to do is prioritize the spending. The problem has been that the federal government has so grossly overspent that the federal government is used to excessive spending. Now we're at the point where we actually need an intervention. And the American people are saying, we want to intervene. Stop spending. Stop spending money we don't have. Why? Because not only our children, but we can't continue to afford to pay the taxes and the toll. And so it's really not just about us. It's also about making sure that our children live a better life than we do. Every generation for 234 years has allowed the next generation to live better. We cannot consume. It would be immoral for us to consume what generations yet unborn have yet to earn.
Another item, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke to a joint session of Congress today. What's your reaction to his speech?
He was phenomenal. He was clear. He eloquently stated Israel's position, and he stated the problems in the Middle East. I think probably the best line that summed up what Benjamin Netanyahu said was this: Israel isn't what's wrong with the Middle East. Israel is what is right with the Middle East. Israel wants to have a peaceful solution, but I think what Israel recognizes is that if Israel would do what President Obama has called for, giving up yet more land and reducing their borders to the 1967 borders, only worse, actually cutting Israel in two, so that the Palestinians have a highway through Israel, and in effect cutting Israel off from itself, I think what Benjamin Netanyahu demonstrated is that there wouldn't be peace. there would be all-out war, and it would be war against a Jewish state. And so the Prime Minister rightly said, Israel recognizes that Palestinians should have a state and can have a state, but Palestinians need to recognize that the Jewish state of Israel has a right to exist. They also understand that there cannot be a, quote, right of return of the descendants of Palestinian refugees into Israel, because then the Jewish state of Israel would be no more. That's certainly reasonable and understandable. And finally, what we understand is that if Hamas is tied to the Palestinian Authority, Hamas is the version of Al-Qaeda in Palestine. We cannot expect Israel to negotiate with Al-Qaeda version in Palestine. I think that the Prime Minister was clear. I think he also demonstrated that America is Israel's greatest ally, and also Israel is America's greatest friend as well. This is a very good friend. President Obama stands alone in his position to put Israel in a position of indefensible borders. We cannot stand there. I stand unequivocally behind Israel.
Well, we know you really are a strong supporter of Israel. Of course, we also know there's this UN effort that's underway to isolate Israel. Has President Obama, by his call to 1967 borders with land swaps, has he essentially aided and abetted these forces that are trying to undermine the legitimacy of the state of Israel?
There is no question. President Obama is the leader of the free world. And he's also supposed to be Israel's friend. From the time that Harry Truman recognized Israel as a sovereign state 11 minutes after Israel declared its independence until today, no president has done more to betray the state of Israel. It's shocking and outrageous, the statement that President Obama said last Thursday. One would think that the president would have had the backing and support of his own party, but it was interesting. Even Senator Harry Reid will not stand with the president on these borders. And so clearly the president does damage Israel, does damage the United States, and in my opinion, damages the Middle East peace process, because he has sent a signal to let the thugs of the world think that they can have a heyday with Israel. And I want to send a very clear signal that that is not the view of the people that I represent, nor of the people that I speak to all across America, nor of my colleagues in the House, nor of my colleagues in the United States Senate. President Obama speaks for himself on this issue, not for the American people.
I want to turn to the fiscal crisis that's facing our nation. The debt has just exploded under President Obama. How much time do you think that we have as a country to turn this situation around, and how bad could it get if our leaders in Washington fail to act promptly?
We have a very brief period of time. We aren't talking about the next generation inheriting this debt. We're talking about people my age who are currently in the workforce who will have to deal with this debt. And what that means for your viewers is a reduced standard of living for all of us. Why is that? Because taxes will be increased. I know that because I'm a former federal tax litigation attorney. I have a doctorate degree, but I also have a postdoctorate degree specifically in tax law. I've seen the devastation of high taxes on job creation. I also know that because my husband and I have started and we run a successful company. We're job creators. This is a high cost of doing business, the level of taxation that we currently deal with in the United States. We have to create American-made jobs again. The good news is we can do this, but we can't do it if the present federal government continues to spend money it doesn't have on wasteful, fraudulent, abusive projects, and we have to reform government. And the good news is we can.
Well, one solution that's been proposed is the so-called Ryan Plan. That would just cut trillions from the deficit, and sort of is controversial now as far as even Republicans. I see Senator Scott Brown today has now come out against the Ryan Plan. You've had some qualification with the Ryan Plan. Can you explain where you stand on the Ryan Plan?
I absolutely agree with the Ryan Plan on the trajectory of spending. My asterisk, if you will, on the Ryan Plan is on how we message this idea of reducing federal government spending. What I believe is that we want to offer a better quality of life for senior citizens. And people need to know that this plan should be called the 55 and Under Plan. We don't want anyone who's 78 years of age who's depending on Medicare to think that their Medicare is going to be pulled out from under them. It won't be. We're talking about people who are 55 years of age and younger who will actually have a far better plan to choose from than the one that will be deficit-laden if we continue down Medicare. Also, I think it's important that people know that we want to focus not just on numbers and not just on insurance options, but we want to focus on cures. Cures for Alzheimer's, cures for diabetes. So many people in our country will be entering the senior citizen population. I want to see a better quality of life for people that are 65 years of age and older. And so in the midst of all of the numbers that we're talking about, we can't miss the humanity of the way that we're going to live as senior citizens. Just as we saw polio cured by the ingenious invention by Dr. Jonas Salk of his vaccination that American school children took, that I had, that probably you had, that saved an entire nation from the perils of polio. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could save senior citizens, not only in this country, but around the world from the ravages of Alzheimer's, or from diabetes, or from various forms of cancer? In the midst of all of this, I don't want to lose that. And so I commend Paul Ryan. I commend the plan. I'm behind that because we can't continue the trajectory of spending. But let's remember, no one over age 55 will be touched, but at the same time, let's focus on a high quality of life and on cures so that senior citizens can live a long, healthy life.
You're such a passionate spokesman on behalf of these conservative issues. So many of our viewers are just dying to know, when is Congresswoman Bachmann going to go ahead and declare that she is running for the GOP nomination for President of the United States? At one point last week, I think you said that you might move up that timetable. Where are we at now on your announcement?
Well, we've been continually meeting with our team of advisors. We have wonderful people that we're working with, and this has been a long decision-making process because this is a momentous decision, and a person can't just jump in. And to be successful, one has to plan and build accordingly. And we've decided that we'll continue with our original plan, and I'll be making my announcement in June, and people will know. We've been taking all the steps toward a run, but the final decision has to be made. The team has to be put into place, because this isn't about any individual's political career. This is about ending Barack Obama, taking away a future for the next generation, because that's what his policies mean. I don't mean President Obama personally. I mean his policies are depriving this nation of a golden future. We see that in how we're being eclipsed in manufacturing with China, how we're seeing OPEC hold the price of gasoline over our heads. All of that can be solved. If we make America the best place for job creation, we can easily do that by making it this one of the cheapest places to have job creation, and by finding the answer to our own problems, which is this: energy. America is the #1 energy-rich nation in the world. We should be drilling for oil, for natural gas. We should be accessing coal, water, wind, solar, every source that we have of energy. We need to utilize, and rather than being an importer, we can be an exporter, and we can be on top of the world again. I want America to be not the tail, but the head.
Sounding very much like someone who's preparing to make an announcement.
Stay tuned.
And we will indeed. Well, thank you so much for joining Newsmax TV.
Thank you.